This is Prosper Mérimée's Carmen, a work of literature now in the public domain. Chapter 4. Spain is one of the countries in which those nomads scattered all over Europe and known as Bohemians, Gitanas, Gypsies, Zigeuner, and so forth, are now to be found in the greatest numbers. Most of these people live, or rather wander hither and thither, in the southern and eastern provinces of Spain, in Andalusia and Extremadura, in the Kingdom of Murcia. There are a great many of them in Catalonia. These last frequently cross over into France and are to be seen at all our southern fairs. The men generally call themselves grooms, horse doctors, mule clippers. To these trades they add the mending of saucepans and brass utensils, not to mention smuggling and other illicit practices. The women tell fortunes, beg, and sell all sorts of drugs, some of which are innocent, while some are not. The physical characteristics of the gypsies are more easily distinguished than described, and when you have known one, you should be able to recognize a member of the race among 1,000 other men. It is by their physiognomy and expression, especially, that they differ from the other inhabitants of the same country. Their complexion is exceedingly swarthy, always darker than that of the race among whom they live. Hence the name of Kala, blacks, which they frequently apply to themselves. Their eyes, set with a decided slant, are large, very black, and shaded by long and heavy lashes. Their glance can only be compared to that of a wild creature. It is full at once of boldness and shyness, and in this respect their eyes are a fair indication of their national character, which is cunning, bold, but with the natural fear of blows, like Panurge. Most of the men are strapping fellows, slight and active. I don't think I ever saw a gypsy who had grown fat. In Germany, the gypsy women are often very pretty, but beauty is very uncommon among the Spanish gitanas. When very young, they may pass as being attractive in their ugliness, but once they have reached motherhood, they become absolutely repulsive. The filthiness of both sexes is incredible, and no one who has not seen a gypsy matron's hair can form any conception of what it is, not even if he conjures up the roughest, the greasiest, and the dustiest heads imaginable. In some of the large Andalusian towns, certain of the gypsy girls, somewhat better looking than their fellows, will take more care of their personal appearance. These go out and earn money by performing dances strongly resembling those forbidden at our public balls in carnival time. An English missionary, Mr. Borrow, the author of 2 very interesting works on the Spanish gypsies, whom he undertook to convert on behalf of the Bible Society, declares there is no instance of any gitana showing the smallest weakness for a man not belonging to her own race. The praise he bestows upon their chastity strikes me as being exceedingly exaggerated. In the first place, the great majority are in the position of the ugly woman described by Ovid, casta quam nemo rogavit. As for the pretty ones, they are, like all Spanish women, very fastidious in choosing their lovers. Their fancy must be taken, and their favour must be earned. Mr. Borrow quotes, in proof of their virtue, one trait which does honour to his own, and especially to his simplicity. He declares that an immoral man of his acquaintance offered several gold ounces to a pretty gitana, and offered them in vain. An Andalusian, to whom I retailed this anecdote, asserted that the immoral man in question would have been far more successful if he had shown the girl 2 or 3 piastres, and that to offer gold ounces to a gypsy was as poor a method of persuasion as to promise a couple of millions to a tavern wench. However that may be, it is certain that the gitana shows the most extraordinary devotion to her husband. There is no danger and no suffering. She will not brave to help him in his need. One of the names which the gypsies apply to themselves, Rome or the married couple, seems to me a proof of their racial respect for the married state. Speaking generally, it may be asserted that their chief virtue is their patriotism. If we may thus describe the fidelity they observe in all their relations with persons of the same origin as their own, their readiness to help one another, and the inviolable secrecy which they keep for each other's benefit in all compromising matters. And indeed, something of the same sort may be noticed in all mysterious associations which are beyond the pale of the law. It has struck me that the German gypsies, though they thoroughly understand the word kale, do not care to be called by that name. Among themselves they always use the designation Romain Chave. Some months ago I paid a visit to a gypsy tribe in the Vosges country. In the hut of an old woman, the oldest member of the tribe, I found a gypsy, in no way related to the family, who was sick of a mortal disease. The man had left a hospital, where he was well cared for, so that he might die among his own people. For 13 weeks he had been lying in bed in their encampment, and receiving far better treatment than any of the sons and sons-in-law who shared his shelter. He had a good bed made of straw and moss, and sheets that were tolerably white, whereas all the rest of the family, which numbered 11 persons, slept on planks 3 feet long. So much for their hospitality. This very same woman, humane as was her treatment of her guest, said to me constantly before the sick man, "Singo, singo, hom tai mulo." Soon, soon he must die. After all, these people live such miserable lives that a reference to the approach of death can have no terrors for them. One remarkable feature in the gypsy character is their indifference about religion. Not that they are strong-minded or skeptical. They have never made any profession of atheism. Far from that, indeed, the religion of the country which they inhabit is always theirs, but they change their religion when they change the country of their residence. They are equally free from the superstitions which replace religious feeling in the minds of the vulgar. How, indeed, can superstition exist among a race which, as a rule, makes its livelihood out of the credulity of others? Nevertheless, I have remarked a particular horror of touching a corpse among the Spanish gypsies. Very few of these could be induced to carry a dead man to his grave, even if they were paid for it. I have said that most gypsy women undertake to tell fortunes. They do this very successfully, but they find a much greater source of profit in the sale of charms and love philters. Not only do they supply toad's claws to hold fickle hearts, and powdered lodestone to kindle love in cold ones, but if necessity arises, they can use mighty incantations which force the devil to lend them his aid. Last year the following story was related to me by a Spanish lady. She was walking one day along the Cala del Cala, feeling very sad and anxious. A gypsy woman who was squatting on the pavement called out to her, "My pretty lady, your lover has played you false." It was quite true. "Shall I get him back for you?" My readers will imagine with what joy the proposal was accepted, and how complete was the confidence inspired by a person who could thus guess the inmost secrets of the heart. As it would have been impossible to proceed to perform the operations of magic in the most crowded street in Madrid, a meeting was arranged for the next day. "Nothing will be easier than to bring back the faithless one to your feet," said the gitana. "Do you happen to have a handkerchief, a scarf, or a mantilla that he gave you?" A silken scarf was handed her. "Now sew a piastre into one corner of the scarf with crimson silk. Sew half a piastre into another corner. Sew a peseta here, and a 2 real piece there. Then, in the middle you must sew a gold coin. A doubloon would be best." The doubloon and all the other coins were duly sewn in. "Now give me the scarf, and I'll take it to the Campo Santo when midnight strikes. You come along with me if you want to see a fine piece of witchcraft. I promise you shall see the man you love to-morrow." The gypsy departed alone for the Campo Santo, since my Spanish friend was too much afraid of witchcraft to go there with her. I leave my readers to guess whether my poor forsaken lady ever saw her lover or her scarf again. In spite of their poverty and the sort of aversion they inspire, the gypsies are treated with a certain amount of consideration by the more ignorant folk, and they are very proud of it. They feel themselves to be a superior race as regards intelligence, and they heartily despise the people whose hospitality they enjoy. "These Gentiles are so stupid," said one of the Vosges gypsies to me, "that there is no credit in taking them in." The other day a peasant woman called out to me in the street. I went into her house. Her stove smoked, and she asked me to give her a charm to cure it. First of all I made her give me a good bit of bacon, and then I began to mumble a few words in Romany. "You're a fool," I said. "You were born a fool, and you'll die a fool." When I had got near the door I said to her, in good German, "The most certain way of keeping your stove from smoking is not to light any fire in it," and then I took to my heels. The history of the gypsies is still a problem. We know, indeed, that their first bands, which were few and far between, appeared in Eastern Europe towards the beginning of the 15th century. But nobody can tell whence they started, or why they came to Europe. And, what is still more extraordinary, no one knows how they multiplied, within a short time, and in so prodigious a fashion, and in several countries, all very remote from each other. The gypsies themselves have preserved no tradition whatsoever as to their origin, and though most of them do speak of Egypt as their original fatherland, that is only because they have adopted a very ancient fable respecting their race. Most of the Orientalists who have studied the gypsy language believe that the cradle of the race was in India. It appears, in fact, that many of the roots and grammatical forms of the Romany tongue are to be found in idioms derived from the Sanskrit. As may be imagined, the gypsies, during their long wanderings, have adopted many foreign words. In every Romany dialect, a number of Greek words appear. At the present day, the gypsies have almost as many dialects as there are separate hordes of their race. Everywhere, they speak the language of the country. They inhabit more easily than their own idiom, which they seldom use, except with the object of conversing freely before strangers. A comparison of the dialect of the German gypsies with that used by the Spanish gypsies, who have held no communication with each other for several centuries, reveals the existence of a great number of words common to both. But everywhere the original language is notably affected, though in different degrees, by its contact with the more cultivated languages into the use of which the nomads have been forced. German in one case and Spanish in the other have so modified the Romany groundwork that it would not be possible for a gypsy from the Black Forest to converse with one of his Andalusian brothers, although a few sentences on each side would suffice to convince them that each was speaking a dialect of the same language. Certain words in very frequent use are, I believe, common to every dialect. Thus, in every vocabulary which I have been able to consult, pani means water, manro means bread, masi stands for meat, and lon for salt. The nouns of number are almost the same in every case. The German dialect seems to me much purer than the Spanish, for it has preserved numbers of the primitive grammatical forms, whereas the Gitanos have adopted those of the Castilian tongue. Nevertheless, some words are an exception, as though to prove that the language was originally common to all. The preterit of the German dialect is formed by adding ium to the imperative, which is always the root of the verb. In the Spanish Romani, the verbs are all conjugated on the model of the first conjugation of the Castilian verbs. From llamar, the infinitive of to eat, the regular conjugation should be llamar, I have eaten. From lilla, to take, lilia, I have taken. Yet some old gypsies say, as an exception, jayon and lilon. I am not acquainted with any other verbs which have preserved this ancient form. While I am thus showing off my small acquaintance with the Romany language, I must notice a few words of French slang which our thieves have borrowed from the gypsies. From Les Mysteries de Paris honest folk have learned that the word churin means a knife. This is pure Romany. Churi is one of the words which is common to every dialect. Monsieur Vidocq calls a horse gress. This again is a gypsy word. Gress, grest, and grest add to this. The word romaniquel, by which the gypsies are described in Parisian slang. This is a corruption of Romain chave, gypsy lads. But a piece of etymology of which I am really proud is that of the word phrimaces, face, countenance, a word which every schoolboy uses or did use in my time. Note, in the first place, the Audin, in his curious dictionary, published in 1640, wrote the word furly mouse. Now in Romany, furly, or fili, stands for face and has the same meaning. It is exactly the os of the Latins. The combination of furlimui was instantly understood by a genuine gypsy, and I believe it to be true to the spirit of the gypsy language. I have surely said enough to give the readers of Carmen a favourable idea of my Romani studies. I will conclude with the following proverb, which comes in very appropriately, en retudi pandanasti abe la macha. Between closed lips no fly can pass.